Olivia chose Sunday evening after the office holiday party. She cooked David's favorite roast for dinner. After dinner, I tried to clean up while David lay on the sofa and watched one of his nature shows. About 9 o'clock, she slid next to him on the sofa. He turned to her, catching the faint scent of her Chanel perfume. Before he could speak, she kissed him on the lips and then said, "I want to talk about the problem between us." Problems? About my attraction to Doug Chappell. Is this Doug, Mr. Umbrella? Yes, the man is in the parking lot, she said. I'm attracted to him. What does it mean? He wants me sexually, she said, and paused. And I want him. She felt his body tense next to her, and then he pulled away. Not wanting to accept his refusal, she pressed her whole body against him. She laid her head on his chest and took his hands in hers. It won't change how I feel about you, she said. I will always want you. It's just that now, at the moment, I want him, and then only physically. David didn't like it. He gently pushed her away and held her at arm's length. In response, he made her look into his eyes. What are you trying to tell me? Did you sleep with him? Because that's not what a wife says to her husband unless she confesses something. She smiled and looked into his eyes again. I would never sleep with him, she began, without telling you first. So what are you telling me now? He asked. I'm saying I want to have this affair before we have kids. We had saved enough to have children, but we were hesitant. We waited. I waited. And now I understand why. Why? I have never been with another man. I didn't know what it was. I was too controlled when I was young. I haven't experienced life. Was too busy studying to enjoy college or law school. I just want this one fling before we start living a good life, a great marriage and kids. I only want one short meeting. You want to have an affair with Mr. Umbrella? He almost shouted. No, she answered, just one meeting. He gets promoted and moves to headquarters in New York. He leaves after the new year. I just want to spend a couple of days with him before he leaves. Weekend and nothing more. What if I refuse? David asked, although he already knew the answer. I was hoping that you would understand that I need this experience. She didn't give David a chance to respond, but she kissed him and snuggled close to him. Everything will be fine, she thought, as they began their usual dance of love. On his part, the lovemaking had a bittersweet undertone. Something was lost. She was the only woman he had ever known, and until a few minutes ago, she was the only woman he expected to know intimately. Olivia decided the matter was resolved and told Doug that her first weekend in January would be his. Doug's house was on a quiet street in Niskayuna. For the area, the house was a modest 3-bedroom split level in an area that preferred 5-bedroom colonials with a center hall. As agreed, his attached garage was open, waiting. Olivia parked her Audi next to Doug's Porsche. He was waiting for her in the living room with an open bottle of wine. For a moment, he was underneath her in the living room as she walked down from the garage to the main floor. He got the full look from the short black dress that hugged her body, highlighting the fullness of her breasts and the seductive curve of her hips. She saw a mixture of lust and anticipation in his eyes. It was so different from the look her husband had given her when she left him just 20 minutes ago. David's eyes were sad. There was a pain in them that she would like to take away if she could, but she had told him that it would only be one time, and then she would be his forever. They will have children together. If, thanks to love, their marriage can survive a small affair, then it will be reliable. Their marriage can be considered strong. She told her husband about this because she sincerely believed in it. What she was about to do was an adventure and nothing more. She wanted to strengthen their marriage and, she hoped, her love for her husband. Something in her believed that she had already done the latter. Her body was tingling with anticipation, from her fingertips to the soles of her feet. Her mind was buzzing with excitement. Their bodies moved simultaneously, as if drawn by an invisible force, and met in an embrace in the center of his living room. Doug kissed her, wrapping his arms around her, but pulled away and said, "One glass of wine, and then we'll go out to dinner. I have tickets to see the band's visit at Proctor Music Hall." Doug knew how to express his gratitude for his conquest. Give her wine, treat her to dinner, and show her how to have a good time. He enjoyed his triumph and assured himself that he was giving as much as he was taking. "I'm all yours this weekend," Olivia assured him. They dined at a romantic Italian restaurant in downtown Schenectady and enjoyed a show at a converted and remodeled vaudeville theater. They drank very little, but when he brought her to his home, he opened a bottle of champagne. They drank during their weekend together and then went to the bedroom and began to satisfy the attraction that had brought them together. He undressed her as if unwrapping a priceless piece of art and told her how beautiful she was. She saw that he was enjoying her body. He appreciated her in a way she had never experienced before. She felt as beautiful as he described her, here with this most handsome of men. His hands danced over her body, driving her desire to the limit. She pulled his shirt away from his chest, revealing the dark hair that covered his chest. It was so different from her husband's almost bare chest. But she quickly pushed thoughts of David out of her mind. She could think about him later. This moment was meant for her and her lover. They lay down in his double bed, the satin sheets of which were made for sex. He started taking off the lace lingerie her husband had bought, but she had never worn it until now. She unzipped his pants and he tossed them aside. He left her wearing a garter belt and stockings. It was the most perfect sex of her life, but it was far from over. They had the weekend, 2 more blissful days. Sunday came too early. They spent most of the weekend in bed. The sex was great, and he was also creative, among other things. It was great, but she was ready to go home and make peace with David. Late on Sunday night, they ordered Chinese takeout, and after they ate, they had sex one last time before she showered, packed, and changed into the short black dress she had worn on Friday night. She left the house the same way she came in, through his garage. She got into the car and drove out through the open garage door, thus hiding from the curious neighbors. No one would say that she spent the weekend with Douglas. The most she could be accused of was being in public with him on Friday night. Soon he will leave for a promotion in New York, and she and her husband will begin to work on the birth of a child. She was very happy with her life. 20 minutes later, Olivia parked her Audi in the driveway. The house was strangely dark. The porch lights were out, and she didn't see David's truck. I decided that David had moved the truck to the garage. Opening the side door, she looked for Buster, who was supposed to greet her return, but he was not on the threshold. She shouted, "I'm home!" I expected Buster to come running, but the dog did not appear. She walked into the kitchen, then into the living room. Both there and there were empty. She shouted again, "David, I'm home!" There was no answer, only silence. "Probably went for a late walk," she said to herself. David must be in a bad mood. He always hangs out with Buster late when he's in a bad mood. She went to the refrigerator for ice and then poured herself a glass of whiskey. I checked the bottle to see if David had drunk, but it was almost full. She sat down on the sofa in the living room and, stretching her legs, settled into a comfortable corner. She was very tired, but knew that she had to wait for David to return to show him that nothing had changed, except perhaps that her love for him had become even stronger. From now on, he will be treated like the prince that he is. Despite her good intentions, Olivia fell asleep. I woke up to the ringing of the front door. The hallway is next to the living room, and the front doorbell can be really loud. Olivia was surprised to see daylight streaming through the windows. She must have fallen asleep. As she approached the front door, her mind told her that something was wrong. Buster. He wasn't jumping up and down near the door. Where is Buster? She thought sleepily. Opening the door, she saw a tall woman whose hair was pulled back. She was wearing a cheap dark pantsuit. "Olivia Taylor?" the woman asked. "Yes. How can I help you?" Olivia answered. "Mrs. David Taylor?" "Yes. What's the matter?" "I'm Detective Sylvia Marks," the woman announced, flashing her gold badge. "Can I come in? I need to ask you a few questions." Olivia instinctively stepped back to allow the detective to enter, but then something dawned on her. "Oh no," Olivia exclaimed. "Is there really something wrong with David?" Detective Marks walked into the living room, where she turned and looked Olivia up and down. Olivia was still wearing the clothes she'd come home in the previous evening, the short black dress she'd worn to dinner with Doug. Olivia realized how inappropriate her dress was for the early morning and felt exposed and embarrassed. "As far as I know, no," the detective answered. "I'm here about Douglas Chappell." "Daga? Well, that is, Mr. Chappell? And what happened to him?" Olivia felt out of place and confused, which was apparently what the detective wanted. "He was attacked last night while he was taking out the trash in front of his house," the detective began, taking a small notebook from her pocket. "He claims that he was attacked by a man wearing a ski mask and holding a small club." "Oh my God! Are you here because you suspect David?" "Actually, no," Detective Marks said with a smile she couldn't suppress. The corners of her mouth turned up as she said, "David Taylor has been ruled out as a suspect, although I admit, in these circumstances, he was our first thought. Especially after Mr. Chappell told us so quickly that he spent the weekend with you." Detective Mark's smile turned into a slight smirk. Olivia felt bad and wanted to sit on the sofa, but in the end, she just collapsed on it. Detective Marks followed suit and sat on the edge of the overstuffed chair opposite Olivia. "You said that my husband is not a suspect?" Olivia asked, her voice shaking a little. "No. The manager and staff of the Albany Yacht Club say he launched his boat, Amor, and sailed south yesterday afternoon. Given the time of year, they decided it would be best to track him via his VHF radio and were able to determine that he was on the Hudson in the Poughkeepsie area at the time of the attack." "Boat?" Olivia asked, beginning to regain some of her professional composure. "He went out on the river in his little sailing boat in January?" Olivia finished incredulously. Detective Marks turned to her notepad. Turning the page, she said, 12-meter Catalina, according to the manager of the yacht club. Apparently, he bought it in December and has been preparing it for the past month. They say he is lucky that there is so little ice on the river this winter. He is believed to be heading south. Olivia jumped up and ran up the stairs. Everything in the bedroom was in its place until she looked closer and realized that some of David's things were missing. Little was taken from his closet, filled with work clothes, but his dresser drawers were almost empty. However, it was on the chest of drawers that she found his note, or rather a greeting card, beautifully sealed in an envelope. The outside of the card read, "I can't express how sorry I am." There was a small poem inside, but she only glanced at it briefly because he left a handwritten note. "Dear Olivia, I accepted a job in Florida at a small marine research institute. It's only an entry-level position, but it's already begun. I'm sorry to leave, but I can't stay in this marriage anymore. And I think you were right when you said, we have to experience everything in life before we really settle down. I'll miss you, but I'm not sure I still love you. I took the money I had saved for our children's fund and bought a boat so I could sail south and live there when I got to Florida. Do what you want with the house and the divorce. I hope you won't be angry and everything will work out for you with that guy with the umbrella. Goodbye, David Detective Marks." Heard Olivia's sad cry and went upstairs to find out what was wrong. Finding Olivia kneeling on the bedroom floor, she helped the woman up and onto the bed. Sylvia felt a little guilty as she sat Olivia down and asked if she could get the grieving woman a drink. Sylvia didn't really like lawyers. In addition, Sylvia herself lost her husband because of another woman and did not really sympathize with those who cheat on their spouse. However, now she was reacting like one abandoned woman to another. "Let me make you some tea," Sylvia suggested. No, I can handle it," Olivia replied. "Let's go back to the living room and I'll answer your questions. Actually, I only have one question. Have you ever seen Louis Stevenson during these last few days that you spent with Mr. Chappell?" "You mean my secretary Julie's husband?" "Yes, but I've never met him, and I have no idea what he looks like." I have a photograph of him, the detective said, and handed Olivia a photograph of the rude man. Looking at the photo, Olivia shuddered and said, "Sorry, never seen him before." "Well, it was just a possibility. The victim couldn't identify him, but I figured if he was following you both this weekend, you might have caught a glimpse of him. I didn't see him following us. Do you think he attacked Doug?" "Yes, he is a likely suspect," Sylvia began in a cold, professional voice. "He has a criminal record for assault and a history of jealousy. Once your husband was eliminated, he became the obvious choice. He, of course, has an alibi provided by a group of friends. I was hoping you could match him with the crime scene so I could break his alibi. Sorry, but I can't help you. Will Doug be okay? He was beaten quite badly, especially in the genitals. He is in the hospital, but I would wait a few days before visiting him." Olivia nodded as they walked down the stairs. "I won't be able to see him for a day or two," Olivia said. "I will have to follow my husband and ask him for forgiveness." "It can be difficult," Sylvia said. "He might be floating under the George Washington Bridge right now." With that last comment, Detective Marks left the Taylor house. Detective Marks was wrong about one thing. By the time she left his former home, David Taylor and his dog Buster, aboard the 12-meter yacht Amur, had passed the Statue of Liberty and exited New York Harbor. David then turned to starboard and headed southeast, leaving New York astern and his marriage behind him. Subscribe to our channel so that your second chaff doesn't cheat on you, and go ahead and listen to the next story, because this story is nothing compared to the next one. If you're under 18, don't even think about listening to the next one.